Yeah, Brett, I'm just going to check that recording on now. So for anyone else going forward, they'll be able to have a look at what we've got for the exam. So if it's okay with you guys, I'm just going to jump in and start showing you some content and some information. And as I say, please, please, please ask some questions as we go through. So a quick non-verbal for me. Can you guys see my screen, my shared screens? Thumbs up. Perfect. Excellent. Yep. All right. So CAPM and PMP exam prep. Just quickly, Millpond, who we are, we're a project management organisation that delivers delivery of project management. We do consulting and we do training. So from the training side, we deliver introductory courses in project management, change management, people management. We do a huge piece on certification preparation. So CAPM, PMP, ACP, and Disciplined Agile. We're just here tonight to talk about the first two. If anyone does have any questions about the others, I can answer that sort of towards the end. We do tailored training. Sometimes organisations ask us to come in and take the framework that we have and apply it to their organisations, add their flavour to it. So we do that based on the needs for organisations, and we get to do a bit of mentoring and coaching along the way, which is fun. So me, I'm the training services manager for Millpond. I'm a trainer and I'm a project manager. I live a bit of a dual life, which means I get to teach people, but I also get to deliver the work. I have my PMP. I've got that in about 2015, I think it was. And I'm actually a qualified travel agent. For most of you guys, you also had a former life, probably before you became a project manager. I'm always interested in people's backstories and sometimes how not project management like it often is. For me, I think travel is quite project management. It's just a bit more fun. My experience is primarily in technology, but I deliver into industries like logistics, dairy. I do quite a bit with marketing, business development, and hospitality and fitness. Most recently, most of my technology work has been in infrastructure. So I get to put technology onto big, large cranes and straddles and fiber and buildings. It's what I get to say. It's the technology you can see, which is cool. Teaching. So I've done business, project management. I teach for the University of Otago for their MBA program online. And I have a background of hospitality and group fitness. I once authored a book. That was awful and hard and wonderful and delightful all at the same time. If anyone is ever thinking of writing a book, double the time. Takes twice as long as what you think. And yeah, I've got a few learnings from that one. I rode bikes. I drink gin. I used to travel. I don't know about you guys, but this time of year is the time that Facebook likes to remind me of just where I normally am rather than winter. And I grow lots of vegetables. And down the bottom, I live in Governors Bay. So in Christchurch, just over the hill, as Cantabrians call it. For Auckland, it would just be like being 10 minutes down the road, but it's my hometown. And following on from tonight, I'm really happy if anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn or any messages, okay? If anyone has any burning questions or thinks about anything after this session, please just drop me a line and I'd be happy to answer anything. All right, the Project Management Institute. So they are an organisation that's based out of America, and the exams we're going to talk about tonight are owned by the Project Management Institute. We're not affiliated with them in terms of we're not part of their business structure, but we are connected to them as part of their authorised training program. So that's our sort of link. They're in 213 countries, about 650 members worldwide. What they do have, and they've brought this in this year, is that they have now brought in an ATP, or an authorised training partner model, which allows only registered training providers around the world to actually provide their training programs. It operates a bit like a compliance model for exam prep training. It ensures that you guys as students receive high quality training, and we're one of 3 registered ATPs in New Zealand. And I think there's about 4 to 7 in Australia at the moment that are providing that. We're also a member of the New Zealand Institute in Melbourne as well. So part of working with ATP and PMI means that you get access to an online portal. Inside that portal, I've got a link shortly. It will show you all the presentation slides as part of preparing for the exam. And there's a student guide there for you. You can add course feedback. You get access to at least 275 official PMI exam prep questions. These are what they call clone questions, which means that they have taken their official exam questions and created a clone version, a similar type of question for you to practice with leading up to the exam. So working with ATPs means that you get access to 275 of those questions. There's a mixture of predictive, hybrid, and agile type questions. And then they are constantly adding a few study aids as well, things like little videos that help explain some of the topics. There's some knowledge checks on there, some more sort of mini practices, templates, and some activities. This is what it looks like. You get this little online portal. So as part of registering with ATP, is that you get access to this for the duration that you are prepping for your exam. On and above, we give you a whole lot of stuff as well. People say to me sometimes, do I need to go and pay for those practice exams? And I'm like, well, if you add up all of the stuff we've given you, you've got about 575 practice questions. For most people, that's enough. When you sit them in like 50 question blocks, 10 blocks of those, trust me, I think that's enough. All right. Any questions about PMI before we dive into the CAPM? No. All right, let's have a look at the Certified Associate in Project Management, or CAPM exam. So the CAPM is an entry-level certification for those who don't yet meet the eligibility requirements for PMP. With the education experience that is required as part of the prerequisites, anybody can sit the CAPM exam. There's about 50,000 out there at the moment that currently have the certification. It's based on the PMBOK guide and it's based on version 6. It is a great stepping stone for some people who don't quite yet make it to PMP, or who are entering into the world of project management, working as project coordinators, have got some exposure to project work and really just want to strengthen that knowledge and gain a bit of a certification to help support that information. So great for those people that are in their really early stages in terms of their career in and around projects. Very good for people who haven't actually led projects in terms of leading the team. It's valid for 3 years, and you can renew it with 15 professional development units and pay a $60 fee. The PDUs are incredibly easy to earn. So all of the certifications require you to earn PDUs. You earn them by working as a PM, making and presenting anything in the project space. So if you create a 4-page PowerPoint slide and need to present it at a meeting, you can claim that as PDUs. If you read any book that has some sort of quality that you can apply to project management, you can use it. I use leadership books quite a lot for it. Kit.
Who keeps track of the PDUs? How do you claim them?
You claim them on your PMI website. So you have a PMI login, and all you do is it's an online form that you fill in. You write the details and you press submit. And usually within 24 hours, they come back and say they've been granted. So it's, I don't know what happens in the back end. I've never had any kind of pushback back. Any kind of volunteering, any kind of mentoring, any kind of technical information that you learn that's related to your project work, you can apply it. You do need to fulfill each side of what they call their talent triangle. It's not difficult. In PMP, you need 60 PDUs, but so about once or twice a year, I log on and go, what have I done for the last 6 months? Yeah, any kind of mentoring, support, education, reading a book, watching any podcast videos, It's not hard and it all adds up. And, I just usually put a couple of hours for a book. If I've
Right.
presented and it's an hour, I can claim an hour for that. 1 hour is 1 PDU. You can get 8 just for working. I get 8 for teaching. I'm already 16 up. For me, normally I don't need 3 years. So like I was 2.5 years into my last 3-year cycle, and I'm well and truly over 16. And they said, well, do you just want to renew, and we'll carry your surplus into your next cycle? So no one should be concerned about what it takes to maintain your PDUs.
Okay, makes sense.
The biggest concern is remembering to log in. They do give you a reminder. They say, oh, you're in good standing, or you need to add some PDUs. But it's never a constraint for people retaining PMP or CAPM, as long as they are working in projects in some way at, for the most part of that 3 years, or at least part-time. It's pretty easy.
Christy, with when I did the CAPM with you a couple of years ago now, I don't think we had PDUs to do. Is that new?
No. Yeah, so back when you did it, Tim, the CAPM was valid for 5 years and then it expired. That was it. The idea was a stepping stone. What they have done now is said, well, it's valid for 3 and you now have the choice to renew it. You just need PDUs for it.
Sure.
But previously, it was really just as a stepping stone, but now they've decided to hold it as a regular certification. All right.
Cool. Yep.
You can just hit your PMP.
Yeah, exactly. Should I still be adding PDUs that I've possibly done prior to doing PMP, or no?
To be honest, if it was me,
not yet.
I would just hold off and sit your PMP and then start claiming your PDUs.
Yeah, sure.
Especially if they're close enough to it. You're not going to need it, so to speak, and you're within your 5 years, so your CAPM is still valid. All right, and so the exam, it hasn't changed too much really since you did it, Tim. 150 questions, mostly multi-choice single answer, which means you get a question and 4 possible answers. You need to select one that is correct. Every now and then we get a few multiple answers where it says choose 2 correct answers. It's very clear. And then occasionally they also have some matching lists. And if you can remember back to probably when you were in high school, you used to have a list on one side, a list on the other, and you used to have to match them up. And usually you could get 1 or 2, and the third one was by default all that was left. They're pretty simple. Those last 2 aren't common in the exam, but it is good to know that, they could turn up there. It is based on predictive, hybrid, and agile. There's quite a lot of agile in the CAPM exam, and it's currently based on the PMBOK version 6. You get 3 hours to sit the exam. I've never known anyone who's run out of time in the CAPM. Tim, do you remember roughly how long it took you? 2 hours? Under 2 hours?
Yeah, I think I was doing mine Christmas Eve because I didn't want to wait until after the break. But yeah, it was about 2 hours, I think.
Yeah, and you probably had some time to look back. And did you even bother to look back?
I think you can flag questions from memory. I think I flagged 15 or so and went back and had another look at them. But yeah,
so you get plenty of time. While 72 seconds seems quite short, the CAPM questions are really quite straightforward, short, easy to answer, and so it's quite easy to answer many of them in under 30 seconds. To take the test, you have 2 choices. You can do it online from your computer in a location that suits you with some rules, or you can go to a testing centre. There are several of those around Australia and New Zealand, usually in the major cities, in which case you book a computer to sit at and do it. The pros and cons. So if you're doing it at home, there's greater availability of the exam. There will be an online proctor who is watching you through your laptop camera the entire time. It's good for people who don't live near the city. It's good for people who just want to get it done. I remember, Tim was the person that did it on like Christmas Eve because he just didn't want to go into the Christmas holiday with the burden of having to continue to study. So he's like, I'm just going to nail it. I'm going to get it done and then chill out for the year. So you can pretty much pick any time you like because there is proctors all around the world. You do need to be in quite a clean environment. So if you have a room, it's okay to have furniture in the room, but you can't have paper on on the table. You've got to be mindful about how much glass in terms of no one else walking through. So for some people, they have a spare room or an office room that they can use that's quiet, and that works really well. And for others who have family at home who just say, oh, there's no way I could do it at home because I'd get interrupted, they often choose to go to a testing centre exam. So there's usually Aldhouse, ACE training do quite a few. Some of the universities do it, and some of the polytechs do them as well. You just book a slot, you turn up half an hour beforehand, they check all your ID, they give you the brief, you sit down at their technology and you sit the exam. Quite low stress because someone else is taking care of all of that. The constraint is that sometimes you have to wait 3 or 4 weeks after you've paid for your exam to actually go and take it. The only one with online is best to use a laptop that is yours and that you can control the firewalls. So you ahead of the exam, you download some software, and you can do this anytime to test whether your computer is acceptable. Basically download some software. It turns off or tells you to turn off things like Snagit and any other sort of application that could take snapshots of the exam, because they don't want you doing that partway through. They need to be able to see you at all times, and the software actually allows them to see your entire screen. So, you know, if you work in any government departments or with high technology rules, most work laptops will just not let you download that kind of software. So it is just something to consider. I can share with you guys the link that's on the Pearson VUE website that you can just test it to see whether it is suitable for you. And there's some great videos out there that show you how it all sort of works. It's quite self-explanatory. The fee for the exam is $225 US or $300 if you're not a PMI member. I think to bear in mind with PMI, I think it's about $60 US to be a member for a year. And then there is a small chapter fee as well on top of that. So what people generally try and work out is if they're paying up for themselves, is it cheaper if I become a PMI member and then pay for the exam? If work's paying for you, then most works won't pay for the membership, they'll just pay for your exam fee. This is something to consider. Eligibility. So you just need a high school qualification or anything that's equivalent, and you do need 23 contact hours of formal project management education. So the exam prep courses that we do mean that you meet that 23 hours in terms of contact. When you go to submit the exam for the application, you don't have to have already completed that education hours. It just has to be scheduled before you sit the exam. There's a trust element with the CAPM exam. Just for a bit of fun, here's an example of a CAPM question in terms of what it looks like. Tim, I'm going to ask you to answer it. See how much you remember. Does anyone want to take a punt? Tim?
Yeah, I think it's B, isn't it?
Oh, close.
Oh, the D, the baseline.
No, it's A.
Ah, stop it.
So the thing is with a CAPM exam is it's a real term and definition, as Tim will start to remember as he gets back into it. It's a real term and definition exam. Basically, it's taking people who don't have a lot of project management experience, it's teaching them a whole lot of terms and definitions, and then the exam is asking you to recall that information for it. So it's very much a, here's a scenario, what's the input, what's the tool, what's the term that we use, or in this case, the document or the plan. The PMP is far more situational based, which we'll look at it. So the CAPM exam is something that everyone can study for. I have only seen in about 6-7 years of teaching the CAPM exam and PMP, I've only ever seen one person fail the CAPM. And the reason he failed is because English was not his first language, and it just took him a second go to actually just get a bit more practice in terms of interpreting the questions in a language that wasn't his primary language. He got it second time round. The process for CAPM, you submit your application online via the PMI portal. Takes about up to 24 hours. You may get audited, about 10% get audited. We haven't seen any since COVID. That might come back. We can help you through that audit process. It's really simple for the CAPM people. You can pretty much knock that out in a couple of days and get that sent back. And once you are approved by PMI, you pay for the exam, you schedule the exam in that order, and then you take it. You're eligible for a year. So as soon as you've submitted your application process, you're eligible for a year. And so we sort of say to people, just get in and do that pretty quickly. Yeah. And then it's available for 3 years, 15 PDUs. Does anyone have any questions in regards to CAPM? Is anyone thinking that's kind of more for them? Yeah, okay. All right, I'm going to jump into PMP. And here's what will happen. You'll either go, yeah, this is me. Or you'll go, nah, I was definitely CAPM. So hopefully I can split you a little bit. So the Project Management Professional, or PMP, it's a retrospective certification. There's just over 1 million people worldwide that hold it. And in some industries, in some countries, it is starting to become a bit more of a prerequisite. If you guys are looking online at LinkedIn and Trade Me and Seek Jobs, you'll start to see, it's usually about 30% at the moment of any kind of project-related roles starting to ask for some kind of certification. It does indicate a solid foundation of readily applicable, which means that because it's a retrospective certification, you have to have had real world, at least 3 years experience, full-time out in projects to be able to have it. So you have to have proved that you've run and led some projects. The exam is based on a job task analysis, which they refresh every 5 to 7 years. So what that means is they go out to the project world and they say, this is what we think it takes to be a project manager in today's world. Are we still on track? And basically every 5 to 7 years, as you know, the industry starts to shift and our skills and our needs start to shift as well. And the exam shifts with it. There is more than one PMP exam. There's an entire bank of questions and multiple exams are produced based on that stock bank of questions. So the PMP exam that one of you sits will not be the same one as another sits. All right, there's a mixture of questions in there in terms of complexity. It's valid for 3 years. And then just to renew, you have your 60 PDUs again with a $60 US fee. And you get a certificate. They send it to you. They still do these days. Courier it out. You can get it framed and stick it on your wall. Oops. I need to stick that to the wall. Okay, so eligibility. If you have a degree in anything, you only need 3 years of project management experience and 35 contact hours of project management training, which again is covered in the exam prep. If you don't have a degree, that's okay. You just need to have a high school qualification and 5 years of project management experience. Now, the high school qualification can just be the highest level you've got and or some other certification that you've had if you've done some other trade certification or anything afterwards. Either one of those. I've never seen anyone get kind of cut off. And look, I've had a lot of people who, you know, are in their 50s and 60s who left school at 15, went into work, and they're coming back to get their certifications in their latter years. And they've been fine. They've been fine from an eligibility point of view. But without the degree, you do need an extra 2 years worth of project management experience. Now, that experience has to be within the last 8 years. So you have to think back. The education hours are usually within the last 3, and then the project experience is within the last 8 years. When you go to submit the application online, they'll ask you for the we've got an entire template to work through, but basically they ask you the name of the project, some really general information. What type of project life cycle did you follow? Predictive, agile? What industry are you working in? What was your role? Your role doesn't have to be project manager. We acknowledge that people who lead projects have lots of different roles now all throughout the world. What's important is that you have led a team of people to deliver change. That's been a part of a project as such, not business as usual, just a project. Something that is unique, it has a start and an end date with a scope to manage, some schedules to manage, and some cost to manage. You enter in the start date, well, it's usually the month and the finish, and the application online automatically calculates that for you. The challenge is you can't overlap your projects. So I don't know about you guys, but I'd really love to just work on one project at a time. But normally I end up with 2 or 3 and we get this overlap. It's okay to have the overlap, but PMI will only count the calendar month once. So if you have a project that overlaps like this, that bit in the middle that overlaps, they only count that calendar month once. So really you're looking at 3 years worth of calendar months of working. Does anyone have any questions about eligibility while we're here? No? Okay. The exam, the new exam from 2021, so it changed this year, is based on 3 domains. 42% of the exam is based on managing people, leading teams, collaborating, dealing with conflict, negotiating, helping sort self-organizing teams, all the people side of it, stakeholders and all their joy. 50% of the exam is based on process, very much still looking at the nuts and bolts of establishing and managing scope, schedules, cost, quality, compliance, procurement, change, all of that sort of document process side, all still there. And then 8% looks at the business environment. This is looking at a little bit about organizational culture, value to the business, knowing that businesses' value changes quite regularly, and just how projects intersect and integrate with businesses. So they're the 3 domains. There's quite a bit of agile now in the PMP, which has been the big shift into 2021. Historically, up until now, it's been very predictive based, but this new exam that's come out from 2021 going forward feels at least 50-50. Here's a sample question. This is an agile question that I've pulled out of the PMP. It's an actual clone question that they've provided for us. Have a look at that. Any ideas? Anyone want to have a punt?
A or C?
B?
A or C?
Oh, A or C, Alpha or Charlie. Oh, yeah, good. Okay. So, and look, here's a great example for the particular both exams. Is what you get is you get 4 possible correct answers. You can usually rule out 2 pretty quickly. Like if you guys looked at B and went reduce the number of team members to guarantee a positive ROI, you would, that sounds a bit dodgy. Yes, not a good answer. Suddenly in the project, well, that doesn't seem like solving the problem either. So you can generally rule out 2. And what you end up with is 2 pretty correct answers. And what you have to do is learn how to figure out what is the more correct answer. A whole lot of the exam prep is actually getting rid of your bad habits on how you read and answer questions. Okay, even myself, I was a lazy reader. Never really read the questions properly, but also really teaching you how to unpack a question specifically, how to pull out the keywords that they're looking at, and then how to kind of dissect their answers. So in this one, the answer is C. We're identifying a minimum marketable feature and we're prioritizing our relevant backlog items. So part of the exam prep is really around just helping you guys to understand the content, learn the PMI terminology. I've seen, unfortunately, a couple of people who are really good project managers, but have not put the effort and the energy and the discipline into actually preparing for the exam, thinking that they would wing it. It's not a wingable exam. All right, it's really not. It's quite a hard exam. I've never met a person who's walked out of the exam and went, oh, I enjoyed that. I've had people who've been super ready for it and walked out and gone, oh my God, that was just hard. And it's like, yeah, but you knew that. They're like, yeah, no, you prepped us to just like manage our emotions and not lose the plot. And that's part of just being able to prepare all of those practice exam questions, just prepare you for going, what would PMI want? And for many of us, we have to put a bit of filter on there. We have to go, what would my response be? What is my real world response be based on the influence of what the world does to us? You know, it makes us a little bit Scroogey. You know, our hope kind of diminishes a little bit after long-term project work. It just kind of helps to put a new lens of what is the best practice? What is the better practice that we're trying to achieve? What is the right target and the right goal? And so that practice leading up to the exam just helps kind of wean out any filters that you might have. Yeah. Certainly it helps prepare those people who have primarily come from a predictive environment. So if you work in engineering, infrastructure, and construction, you've primarily worked in predictive environments. It's very logical. You can't really do a lot of agile in most of your projects. You know, pulling buildings apart and putting them back together, not so easy. So what it does do though, is just help introduce and help practice all of the agile terminology that you'll need to know and be prepared for in the exam as well.
Christy, I'm going to have to duck off.
Okay, Kip.
But thank you very much for taking the time to say
That's
hi
all right.
and run us through some stuff. I think CAPM is definitely the place that I'm going to start, but
Okay.
I'll watch through the rest of the video later.
Sounds
and
good.
See what else you talk about.
We'll go from there.
But thanks very much. Nice to meet
Safe flight. You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Right, so the lessons. We go through about 5 lessons as part of preparing for the exam. The first one is creating a high-performing team. You can see from the titles there, we're really looking about how to manage our team and our stakeholders as part of project work. The lesson 2 looks at starting the project. This is all around planning and managing. It's our planning and executing processes from our PMBOK guide. It's all of those key knowledge areas that anyone who's been involved in projects can relate to. Scope, budget, resources, schedules, governance, procurement. The third part is doing the work. Well, now that we've planned it, how do we actually produce things? How do we keep the project on track? How do we manage risk throughout project, manage our stakeholders, engage and communicate with them? Fourth one is keeping the team on track. No, everything starts off great and we end up on this kind of roller coaster as we start to deliver. So managing conflict, looking after our stakeholders, using a bit of emotional intelligence, getting rid of all the obstacles and the impediments that come out. And then lastly, the last lesson is looking at keeping the business in mind, compliance, delivering value, supporting organizational change. So the exam prep is based on those 5. From a day course point of view, these don't reflect, like they're not even in terms of effort, but we certainly start from a linear point of view. We just roll from lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 all the way through. Now, the exam itself, good news, there's 20 less questions to answer these days. Excellent. So we only have 100, it's going to be a bonus. We only have 180 questions now, mostly multiple choice, a couple of multiple responses. Again, you'll know how many answers you're looking for. There's a few matching, hotspot, and fill in the blanks. I haven't heard of anyone this year having the last 2. yet. I think they're going to start integrating some of those. You get 3 hours 50 for the exam, which equates to 70 seconds per question. You can get breaks in them now. That was one of the cool things that came out of COVID, was they had to move the PMP exam online. And in order to put what was a 4-hour exam, but now is 350 online, they realistically had to give people breaks. And so what you do now with this PMP is you sit it in 3 sections. You sit 60 questions, and then you get the opportunity to review any of those 60 questions, and then you submit it. And then you get a break for 10 minutes. And then you start the next 60 questions. You submit that, you get another break, and then you get the third 60. So you end up having sort of 3 mini exams with a 10-minute break in between. This means that if you are at home, there's the opportunity to actually just leave for those 10 minutes, go to the toilet, come back, and carry on again. The pass mark for both is a real mystery. This is the thing that messes with a few people's heads. So you don't know your score, and you will not know what questions you got right and got wrong. What you get is an indication of whether you are below target, on target, or above target. And I think there's a needs improvement in there as well. So you end up on this kind of scale. For the PMP, they'll give it to you over those 3 domains. For the CAPM, you end up with it over the knowledge areas from the PMBOK guide. And essentially, it means that you can be slightly lower in some areas and higher in the other. Doesn't really change the end result. What it changes is the level of data and information that you get. So if you're a bit like me and you just like data and information, you're like, well, I want to know which questions I got right and got wrong. Tough. You will never know, because that protects the questions for the exam in terms of its content. Otherwise, if you knew what the answers were, you'd just share them with people, right? They'd be all over the internet, and the integrity of the exam and the certification would be zilch. We don't know if it's 50%, 60%, 70%. There's a whole lot of theories out there. What I do know, though, a couple of things, is so far this year, cool news is that Milpon students for PMP were scoring in the top 1% of all students sitting the exam in the world, not just in New Zealand, but in the world. So that was like super cool, especially being from New Zealand. We haven't had anyone fail this year. So I think we're at about 25 students, 30 students so far that have sat their PMP this year. Most of them started from about June. No one has failed yet. And I tell all my students that they cannot be the first to fail because they'll break my perfect record. But what we do know is that, and even from all our past teachings, is that based on all the mock exams that we give you, we know that when you get to about 75, 80% or higher in our mock exams, that you'll pass. Assuming you don't have a freak out on the morning of the exam or things go wrong, we get this kind of confidence score level that says, based on how you're performing in mock exams, we get a higher confidence level, and you do too, going into the exam, that you're more likely to pass. That's what we can measure and what we can control. The exam fee is $405 for PMI members, $555. So if you are paying for it yourself, it is far better financially to be a PMI member when you're doing the PMP exam. Process is pretty much the same. The only difference is you have to wait 5 days from submitting. The only other part, I guess, though, is that your education hours need to be complete. So you need to have finished all of your education hours before you can submit your application. What we can do is that if you have had any other education in the last 3 years that relates to project management, you've gone and done some procurement, you've gone and done some leadership training or some financial or cost, some sort of training, we can take some time or some hours from that education, merge it with ours, and allow you to apply for the exam a little bit earlier, a week or 2 earlier as such. All right, that's the PMP exam. Generally, the need for 3 to 5 years worth of project experience in terms of leading teams. You don't have to have had the project manager full job title because we know that industries call them different things, but you need to have been responsible for aspects of the project and leading the team. Hopefully that's a split for you guys to go, yep, I'm CAPM, or oh, I think I'm PMP. Usually for anyone in the middle who's like, thinks they can get to PMP, I always recommend that we should have a discussion and try and see if we can get you there. Sometimes for people it's no, I haven't got that, I have to go for CAPM, and that's okay too. Certainly I do find that anyone who does CAPM has a nicer experience for PMP because they've kind of gone through the exam process, they've gone through the learnings and the questions. And if you have done CAPM, you don't have to do the 35 hours to sit your PMP because you've already done it. You've already got your CAPM, that qualifies. And so when it comes time to sit your PMP, all you have to have done is had enough project experience to satisfy that application, and then you can jump to PMP. All right. Okay, so exam prep education. There's usually, so it's 23 for CAPM, 35 for PMP. It's PMI developed content, and then we've added and supplemented our own stuff on top of that. You get slides, study guides, lots of practice quizzes, like 500 plus, access to some videos, and then we've got some advice from past students. So 95% over our last 1,000 delegates have passed for PMP, 99, it's just that one person for CAPM, and then we've had 100 pass rate for the ACP, and we're sitting on 100% for the new exam. So both courses come with we can either do classroom, which is usually held in major-ish cities, not always major, just big towns. I came up from New Plymouth. I've been to Paidoa. I was in Paidoa 2 years ago, and everyone says to me, where's Paidoa? The only Paidoa I know is like Lemon Pyro. And I was like, yeah, that's where I was. I was in a regional council up there. So we do it in classroom, and then for everyone else, we do virtual and online. So classroom, 5 days a week, 1 day per week, usually like 9 till 4:30. The 1 day a week gives you a bit of time to learn and incubate. So you have some education, you get some time to study in between, think about it, learn about it, you know, and then we do it again for the next 4 weeks. It's a bit easier to kind of part your schedules to fit 1 day in a week. And most people who tell me go through the course, every now and then I ask them, how do you feel about doing a boot course, like boot camp, 5 days in a row? And they're like, nah, way too much information. So 1 day a week generally seems to work. You get access to the PMI portal or a PMBOK guide. You get printed slides, games. We do lots of clone questions and practice exams. We help you guys in both classes with these, with your application support. So CAPM is super easy. PMP takes a bit just to write your project experience. So we just help you guys. We give you a framework to start with. You write it down, you send it through, we tweak it, zhoosh it up, send it back. You have a look at it, and then you're happy to submit. So we help you with that to make sure that you get through. So the course fee is $3.5, and we have got some upcoming classes if anyone's interested in that. Virtual, 12 online sessions. Monday night is the next ones, and we go 7 till 9:30. So for some people who can't get to the cities, who 1 night a week for 12 weeks is a better option, then it's the same content. We just run it simply via Zoom. All right, you won't get any printed material, but you get everything digitally, and we still help you with all your exam support. It's a lesser fee, obviously, because we don't have the same overheads in terms of course venues and stuff like that. Both of these suit different people. Some people say virtual is perfect for me. I'm really happy. I like using that. Some people say, no, I need the discipline of sitting in a classroom and being accountable and working with others. You know, for me, it's around choice for people and giving people the options to be able to choose what works for them. I always say to people, if there is any kind of classes that like dates or positions or locations that don't work, just drop us a line. It's interesting how much kind of general information or queries we get, and sometimes we can kind of collate those up and even just build a course or a class or move a class to fit a particular group or month that seems to work. The days of the week vary. Almost never on a Friday, almost never on a Monday. I don't know about you guys, but a Friday education, usually by about 2 o'clock, most of you guys have checked out. So I don't like teaching on a Friday, but usually the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday seems to suit most people. Occasionally we will do Mondays, but normally that's sort of middle of the week. So I guess, look, is there any questions from anyone? What questions do you have? Now's a perfect opportune time just to ask, check something in the chat. The whole point of this session was really to kind of put out any burning ember fires of questions and just give you a bit of information. So it's really for you.
Is there one or another that is more restricted outside or more valuable to be holding in terms of looking for work?
Sorry, I couldn't quite catch that. Can you say that again?
I'm just saying, is one or the other more valuable than the other in terms of what employers are looking for outside?
Yeah, PMP, definitely. So in terms of a value, when you think about it, anyone can study their way to CAPM exam. Whereas from a PMP point of view, you have to have had at least 3, if not 5 years of project experience. So from a career value point of view, PMP is higher than CAPM. CAPM is still higher than nothing. Let's be clear about that. But certainly, and that's why I say, if you are close enough to getting your PMP, I always encourage people to stretch towards their PMP. And look, I'm happy to talk to people about the type of project work that they do. Myself, when I stretched for PMP first time round, I'd done a lot of project work, but never as an official project, because I worked for organizations that weren't mature enough in that project space. I did everything that project managers do. I just didn't at the time really know it was a project. But through talking to some people and establishing that I was actually running projects, I was actually doing all of the elements of it, I just called it my job. And I had one of those role titles that had like 15 different terms underneath it. When they had to name my role, I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. I'm just a get stuff done person, jack of all trades. So if anyone's sort of thinking, oh, well, I kind of do lead projects, but our organization doesn't call them projects, happy to kind of talk through with you guys about that. Good question though.
Yeah, Christy, is it worth going through before the 12 virtual sessions for PMP or something? Is it worth going through the PM guide before that? Or do you think we just start confusing ourselves if we go into that earlier?
Yeah, look, I'm a big one on return on investment, and that means your time. And so what I like to do with this is almost treat it like a project, and we just literally try and cram it into a period of time. If you are sitting the CAPM exam, then the PMBOK guide is the best reference for you. Other than like another CAPM exam prep, Rita McCauley does a really good one. That's the book for you. When it comes to the PMP exam, it's not based on the version 6 PMBOK guide, and that's why they've got that allo choice online material. So there's little benefit to starting beforehand. The whole idea through those 12 sessions is we take you through all the content and explain it, talk about it, relate it to project work. And normally what happens is people just study either the allo choice or another exam prep, do some exams and some reading each week in between their studies. So you don't have to wait to start. Yeah.
Cool. That's good.
What I do like, when you finish the course, whatever course you take, usually within about 4 weeks for most people is where you want to sit the exam. Some go as quick as 2 weeks. When I did mine, I think I did it a week because we were on paper exams. 2 weeks is pretty good. 4 weeks, you've generally trying to hang on to your discipline. Life crashes back in when you don't have to turn up every week and answer questions and be accountable. For some people, it's the case, the fear of me calling them out in front of people and saying, Bevan, so what do you think about question number 4? And you're going, oh, I didn't study. it's usually enough to force people to actually study. I mean, it works for me. It's an accountability aspect. But after we finish working together, real life fits in, we all get busy and we kind of get a little bit lax. And so about 4 weeks is when that knowledge starts to kind of fall away. And there's a risk that you then lose the confidence to sit the exam at the other end. There is a small number of people that say, I just feel like I need a little bit more prep, and they're diligent and they'll prep everything and they'll go about 2 months after the exam. I tend to know which category most of you people fit in after about a couple of weeks of working with you. All right, most of us are pretty good at picking a deadline and making it happen for that deadline. All right, we're good at working to pressure and carving and making the space when we have a target to work with.
That's the same amount of course length for both the things, like CAPM and PMP? The course outline? Yeah.
Yeah, so what we'll do is that the content is suitable for both. So as we go through the content, it's content that's useful in the CAPM exam and it's content that's for the PMP exam. And we just, wherever required, we'll talk about how it's applicable. So right the way through the education, after every topic, I'll give you a PMP exam question to try and a CAPM exam question based on that topic. And so you get to see kind of the differences of it. The real difference is in the questions. So we've actually got some pure CAPM style questions for CAPM people to practice with, and then we've got some PMP questions. What CAPM people usually like to do is I'll do some of the PMP questions. It's like a little bit of a stretch, and then when they go back to the CAPM questions, it feels so much easier. But the content is the same, because at the end of the day, project management is the same. All it is that the exam is just looking at it for a slightly different angle. So CAPM is terms and definitions. You know the term and definition. We're doing this kind of activity. What are we doing? What's this tool that we're using in here? PMP is scenario based. You are a project manager. This is the environment of your project. This crappy thing has happened. What should you do next? Because when you think about long-term project experience, it's all about navigating your way through risks and challenges and stakeholders. It doesn't matter how well you plan something, landmines go off, people throw stuff at you. You have to kind of figure your way through it. And that's really what good experienced project managers do, is they figure out how to prep to reduce some of those issues, but they know how to navigate their way through them when they come up. And that's what the exam is really looking at, saying, here's a scenario, it's not that flash, what's your best course of action going forward to try and resolve it? And it's all about getting resolution. So you saw in that last question, it's all about saying, hey, we've got a problem, we're not getting enough return on investment, what do we need to do? Find a minimum marketable feature and then reprioritize all the backlog, which is our work, to focus on delivering that and being able to move forward. So different structure in the questions, but same content that we're essentially both drawing from. Good. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, look, I'm happy to let you guys go. We're just a couple minutes over time. I appreciate it took a little bit to get going, which was okay. Thank you for your time, for your questions. I hope we've answered them for you. I'll get Bronwyn, who's our lovely person who holds us all together in the office, to send you this video link, and you can share it with anyone as well. And if you get any questions, you can either email us, you can message me on LinkedIn, or you can give me a call, or you can email me. Happy to answer anything. If you're unsure on your qualifications in terms of your experience, just drop me a line. I'm happy to have a chat with what you are doing. Yeah, and I hope that's provided some good insight for you tonight. All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was great.
Go and have a great week.
You too.
See ya.
Thank you.
Ta.